How do you actually sit down and write a story? In this video, I'm going to be walking you through how to use this 3-act story structure to create a cohesive arc for your story and make sure that it all flows seamlessly. So let's get started. Sup peoples, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be, as I said, going over the 3-act story structure. If you've seen the rest of this series, which I will link up in the cards, then you will have your characters and your world built. If you do not, like if you have not seen those videos and you need to do those 2 steps, check out those 2 videos. This is a full 3-part series. You know, if you already have your world and your characters, even without those videos, then you can just skip them. That's why you don't have to watch these in any particular order. Just if you're struggling with those steps, they're actually probably in this side because I always get the side wrong, but let's jump right into it. Now this is a long script, so if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at my phone. I wrote a lot of notes. I wanted this to be coherent and cohesive and educational instead of just me rambling at you like I'm doing right now. First up, you need to come up with the base concept of your story. I personally believe in knowing the end before you begin, not air quotes, like this isn't true air quotes, just in the sense that I can't put quotation marks on my mouth. Try to lay out your story with just 6 sentences. You know, that's all you need to get a base overview of your concept. 2 for the beginning, 2 for the middle, 2 for the end. Once you have the most basic of plans in place, you can start fleshing things out from there. For the example that I'm using, I am going to be talking about a fanfic that I am writing. I also write original stories. I'm not just a fan fiction writer, but I don't want to spoil those original stories, so I'm going to spoil this fanfiction's plot when I explain it to you. So I'm going to be writing a Dragon Prince plus Gravity Falls fanfic called Dragon Falls. I guess you can find it on AO3 once I start posting it. The 6 sentences that I used to explain it to myself are: after the death of his wife, Harrow decides to take his sons to visit Dragon Falls and stay with his friend Viren and his 2 children. There, Callum and Ezrin discover a supernatural mystery connected to a mysterious journal. As they try to uncover the mysteries of the town, the 2 befriend a girl named Rayla, who brings their Uncle Viren's character into question. In their search for the truth, the brothers and their new friend end up in opposition to their childhood friends and Viren's children, Soren and Claudia. After the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, the fate of the world is put into jeopardy and the group must ally themselves to take down a dangerous and supernatural being. But trust isn't so easily regained. So that's just 6 sentences, and that is basically the pitch for my story. It gives me an overview of the start, the middle point, and the end. This lays the plot out into 3 distinct points. After the death of his wife, Harrow decides to take his sons to visit Dragon Falls and stay with his friend Viren and his 2 children. There, Callum and Ezrin discover a supernatural mystery connected to a mysterious journal. Here we lay out the foundation of the story and the inciting incident. So as I said, I will be using the 3-act story structure. So this is the first part of it. As they uncover the mysteries of the town, the 2 befriend a girl named Rayla, who brings their Uncle Viren's character into question. In their search for the truth, the brothers and their new friend end up in opposition to their childhood friends and Viren's children, Soren and Claudia. This is the midpoint, or the heart of them unraveling the mystery. This is the middle of the story. After the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, the fate of the world is put into jeopardy and the group must ally themselves to take down a dangerous, supernatural being. But trust isn't so easily regained. And finally, the ultimate conflict and the climax of the story. Once you have the basics of your story, you can think about the theme. A theme is the underlying concept or message that your story explores and explains. I'm basically just borrowing themes from Gravity Falls and the Dragon Prince, since this is a fanfic. I'm using it as an example, but you should try and think about what message or ideas your story is exploring. For example, in my other projects, I wanted Project Eros to be about finding yourself and feeling confident in yourself, and that is sort of the main theme and message that everything is built off of. It's like valuing yourself and valuing your future and trusting yourself and discovering yourself. It's all like very like I am me centric. And with Project Punk, my comic, which is cyberpunk, I wanted to explore the theme of found family and what family means, whether it has to be blood ties or whether a good friend is family. It's just all about exploring family and what makes someone family and the complicated web that relationship is. Now that you have your theme, now that you have your 6 sentences, we can flesh those 6 sentences out, and that is step 2, the outline. Now, as I said several times now, I will be using the 3-act story structure. You can look this up online to find beat by beat and more examples. It's very common It's what a lot of stories use. But just because it's simple and just because it's common does not mean it's not good. It is actually simple and common because it's good, you know? Like, those things can all be true at the same time. It wouldn't be in so many stories if it wasn't a good thing to just use, especially as a newer writer. It gives you just a clear beginning, middle, and end that you can lay your story around. So Act 1 is the setup. Act 1 includes 3 beats: the exposition, inciting incident, and plot point 1. Exposition is when we learn about the setting and the main character. Use this as an opportunity to establish the who, where, and what of your story. We're seeing their everyday life, yes, but we're seeing what's missing from their everyday life. We're getting a feeling for why this is a story and not just someone living in our life. Why this is a story we're reading, a character we're reading about, and not just our neighbor. For example, in my fic, the exposition would be: after the death of his wife, Harrow decides to take his sons to visit Dragon Falls and stay with his friend Viren and his 2 children. In this example, we can see the who, Callum and Ezrin; the where, Dragon Falls; and the why. Harrow is hoping that that fresh scenery and familiar faces will help them to better get through the loss of their mother. So the exposition would be about establishing all of that. If it were me, and it is me, I would probably start with Callum and Ezrin and Harrow pulling up to the Mystery Shack, or in this case, the Banther Lodge, which is where Viren and his kids live. Establish that there is something missing, that there is something different. We have our characters be interested, and then we're introduced to all of the characters that are going to be important, like Harrow and Callum and Ezrin and Viren and Claudia and Soren, all right off the bat. We are establishing where they are because they are going into a new location. So Callum would probably describe the Banther Lodge or Mystery Shack or whatever you want to call it. We're basically just giving the gist of where the characters are, why they're there, and who they are. Next is the inciting incident. This is a crucial part of your story because it sets everything else in motion. This is often called the call to adventure. So once you decide what this call will be, you have to decide whether your character will follow it willingly or resist it at first. Either way though, this moment will spark the rest of the events of the story in one way or another. For example, there Callum and Ezrin discover a supernatural mystery connected to a mysterious journal. When Callum discovers the journal, that is the inciting incident. He suddenly realizes that there's a lot more going on in sleepy Dragon Falls than he thought. He chooses to embrace the call to action and tries to discover who wrote the journal and what other mysteries might be happening in the town. So now we have established who our characters are, where they are, why they're there, and then we give them a moment of choice. And this is important. You don't want your character to just feel like they're following a plot like a river. You want it to feel like they're actively paddling the boat and deciding which turns and twists down the river they take. That way, your character won't feel passive or like a punching bag for the plot. They will feel like they're engaging with the story and guiding it forward. So Callum choosing actively, I'm going to pick up this journal, I'm going to try and solve this mystery, is him taking action, and that will make him feel like the thing moving the plot forward rather than just the plot's happening and he's there. So next is plot point 1. This is when the characters engage with the inciting incident and begin to follow the plot. In some stories, this happens in the same scene as the inciting incident, and in others it takes place after. It all depends on the specifics of your story. For my story, I'd say that Callum finding the journal is the inciting incident, and him deciding to believe in it and look into the mystery of the author is plot point 1. Think of the inciting incident as someone offering your character their hand, and the first plot point is them choosing to take it. So like, let's say that the inciting incident, Callum doesn't choose the journal. You know, like let's go through 2 different versions of what I mean by this. So in one version, there's the inciting incident, which is Callum finding the journal. The inciting incident happens to your character. And then plot point 1 is their reaction to it. So there's one version where Callum finds the journal in the inciting incident and picks it up and decides to investigate who the author is, and that's the first plot point. And then there's an alternate version where the plot point happens later. Like Callum finds the journal, is like, this is a bunch of baloney, throws it aside, and then maybe the first plot point is like him discovering something happening and going back and choosing the journal and be like, fine, I have no choice. And that would be the first plot point. So like I said, the inciting incident is the plot offering its hand, and the first plot point is your character taking it. Now we're into Act 2, the confrontation. This is the longest part of the story and makes up most of your book, but that doesn't mean it has to be boring. First in this section is the rising action. This is when your characters are adapting to their new surroundings, encountering their first roadblocks, and sort of just like everything starts moving and they're like, oh, we are going places now. There is a thing happening, and they're sort of reacting to that. Your protagonist is mostly reacting to what's happening in this part. For example, as they try to uncover the mysteries of the town, the 2 befriend a girl named Rayla. Callum and Ezrin are in new surroundings and with new people. They're starting to look into the mysteries of the journal, which is when we really start to get to know our side characters, Rayla, Soren, and Claudia. We're introduced to the overarching conflict, figuring out who the author is. Next is the midpoint. This is usually at the very middle of your story, hence its name, and it features something going wrong. So if the confrontation is things happening, them starting to look into the journal, all of that, like they're starting to take actions based on their decisions in the first part of the book. Things are going smoothly up until this point, and now things have to go wrong, otherwise it gets boring. This is usually the very middle of your story and features something going wrong. As I said, for my fanfic is when it's revealed that Rayla has been a spy this entire time. She was sent to befriend them in an attempt to expose Viren, who she thinks is a villain. This is when the who brings their uncle Viren's character into question part happens. She reveals that the reason she was spying on them was that Viren is sketchy and she thinks he's a bad person. Now, there's a couple ways that you could view this as going wrong. One, Callum and Ezrin feel pretty betrayed by finding out that she was spying on them this whole time. But also, they're gonna now be sort of scared of their uncle, because this person that they befriended and have been trusting thinks he's a bad and scary person and was lying to them because she thought he was that scary that she needed to expose him as a villain. But at the same time, she's been lying, so can they trust her? Which brings us to plot point 2. The midpoint has rattled our protagonists, so now they need to take a more active role in the story and make hard decisions. For my fic, this is when Rayla comes clean about why she was spying and reforges her friendship with Callum and Ezrin, and together they decide to look into Viren, also known as, in their search for the truth, the brothers and their new friend end up in opposition to their childhood friends and Viren's children, Soren and Claudia. If the beginning is about setting up who, what, why, and then what's going to happen because of that, the midpoint is about them getting in the thick of it. Things start happening, they start figuring things out, they start doing things, their actions start to have consequences. And then we have Act 3, the resolution. Act 3 is sort of like the final battle in a fantasy movie. It's epic, yes, but it's not usually that long. I mean, it depends on the movie. But you should get ready for everything you've been building towards to come to fruition and the ball to really start rolling at speed. The first step in the resolution is the pre-climax. This is when we get our first glimpse of the antagonist's true strength. This is the moment when all seems lost. After the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, the fate of the world is put into jeopardy and the group must ally themselves to take down a dangerous supernatural being. But trust isn't so easily regained. At this point in my fic, the truth about the author has been revealed and it leaves the characters divided, giving my villain an opportunity to swoop in and split them even further. Then is the climax. So now that you think all hope is lost, this is when you push through anyway and you do the thing. This is when the big bad is defeated, or the overarching conflict is resolved, depending on what kind of story you're writing. For my fic, this is when the protagonists come together again despite their differences and defeat the villain. Finally is the denouement. That's what my notes call it. That's what the internet calls it. I don't know how to pronounce it. The villain has been defeated. The conflict has been resolved and the protagonists are victorious. For me, this is showing the characters' relationships finally healing after everything that they've been through. Now, how much of this you want to write out in detail is up to you, your preferences, and your project. For my comics, I'll just write a 1 or 2 sentence description of what's going to happen. Same for my fanfics. But for a full novel, I'll usually write out what happens in every single chapter, potentially scene by scene. So this is when you decide how much you want to flesh out your outline. But either way, you now have a story. Congratulations! And it's just waiting for you to tell it. Because now you have everything that you really need. You have your foundations, and you can just sort of like follow this arc and fill in little gaps as you go. So let me know in the comments if you read or write fan fiction. I have recently become really obsessed. I think I've written like nearing 10,000 words in the last week. I'm having so much fun, but my other projects are not getting worked on. I have no regrets. And of course, don't forget to subscribe because I have new videos coming out every single week. Yeah, I'm sorry that I paid so much attention to my phone. I really wanted this to make sense, so I scripted the whole thing, which usually I don't do. Usually I just write down some notes and pointers. If me looking at the phone bothered you, let me know. I want to get a teleprompter so I can write scripts and have cohesive thoughts, but don't have to be looking at my phone. But I don't really know. They're sort of expensive. I don't know if my phone would work with them. I think I'd need a camera. It's just a whole thing. If you're okay with me just glancing down at my phone phone every once in a while, let me know, because that'd be cool. But if it is annoying or it takes away from the video quality, let me know that too, because I can try and get a teleprompter. I just want to keep upgrading my videos regularly. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that if you watch the rest of the series, you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what your story is going to be. I feel like I'm always getting newer writers, and I love hearing your ideas, and I cannot wait to read your books one day. So I will see you then, and I will see you on the next page.